Today I was driving and I noticed there was a family of 3 and they were all holding hands and they were walking up the road next to the sidewalk.
Why do people not use the sidewalk?
Yeah.
I don't know if this happens everywhere, but I know in my town, there's a scene in Scrooge, in the 1970s Scrooge, where in Jacob Marley's first scene, where Alec Guinness comes in and Scrooge offers him a seat and he sits down directly next to the chair.
Yes.
On nothing. This is my analogy of what I see everywhere I drive. I'm always tempted to just pull over or slow down, and it's difficult to approach strangers, but I just want to be like, excuse me, just a quick question. Horror in the 1970s. What do you know about it? What's the feeling? What's the mood?
It's very colorful. It's
Okay.
there was a lot of monsters. There were a lot of vampires.
There you go. Now you're talking. Yes, there were a lot of vampires, a lot of Frankenstein monsters,
Yeah,
a lot of werewolves, a lot of gothic horror, castles, the curse of this, the house of this, the night of this. So anything that wasn't that are the standouts. So everything that was that was...
It all blended together.
It ran its course. I'm not gonna lie. There's not a lot of great stuff came out of that angle. The Hammer stuff, pretty chintzy at that point, I think.
Predictable. All
Yes.
the same, felt the same.
Yeah. These 25-pound period pieces weren't. The spookiness was gone. They weren't scary. The makeup effects were not very good. They weren't good for much. So let's look to an expert. Let's look to Fangoria magazine, which I don't know about you, but Fangoria is very much an 80s thing in my mind.
Oh yeah.
So we had to go back to the beginning, to August of 1979. So exactly 45 years ago to issue number 1. Numero uno. Premiere issue decides to celebrate its own anniversary, 25 years with Godzilla. Godzilla's cool, so I'll allow this. I think that's a good inaugural King of the Monsters. That's a good legacy to have. What's your first cover? Godzilla. Sure, right?
Yeah. Did Starlog come before this or after?
Starlog presents.
Aha. So the transition.
The transition is it's an achy one. It was not a quick birth. Welcome to the world of Fangoria. And there's the introduction. I'm not going to read the whole introduction by publisher Kerry O'Quinn. I don't know who that is. Typically it was other people. It was in the early ones, it was Bob Martin. But Kerry O'Quinn begins with, I received a letter this week that stated, I just saw Superman and I was amazed. It made me feel like I could fly. I loved it. It brings out the adventure and romance in everyone. In a world of reality, we need more fantasy. And they go on to talk about basically fantasy and how this magazine is going to shine a light on the world of fantasy. Fangoria is much more than just another cheap monster magazine. Each issue will include full-color art, media news, techniques of special effects and makeup, important interviews, the same high quality you have come to expect from other Starlog publications. Our intention is for Fangoria to be the first classy, professional pictorial news magazine covering the world of fantasy. Examine every page of our premiere issue and send us your ideas, questions, and criticisms so that we can shape our future editions into the kind of magazine you want. That's our goal. More than that, we want to shape Fangoria into the kind of magazine that awakens your spirit of adventure and romance and makes you feel like you can fly. Enjoy. In all fairness to them and this magazine, they don't know what the 80s or 80s cinema is going to be like. So what do they have to celebrate? Everything we just talked about. First of all, what word is absent from that? A word that is largely absent from this entire magazine. Horror. Well, it's not that they weren't covering horror. It wasn't called horror, more or less. They were fantasy movies or monster movies. That's what they were called, more or less. And so I can't imagine what they predicted would be the future, but just more Draculas and werewolves.
Well, in a minute it gets grittier.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they're moments away from everything changing. Not that Halloween and Suspiria and Texas Chainsaw and Exorcist, all of these things are stirring the pot for years, but they're still very much in the science fiction mindset. On the very next page is an ad, coincidentally, for Fangoria. I think we've read this one before because I love this phrase, but between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge exists a land populated by otherworldly creatures, science fiction aliens, vampires, ghouls, radioactive monsters, beings beyond description. Their homeland is the realm of fantasy, and now, for the first time, comes a major magazine totally devoted to the many worlds of the Fangoria. A phantasmagoric flight into sheer imagination. First of all, I like the Fangoria, like the thriller.
Yeah.
I've never heard it referred to in that way before. The Postal Zone. I don't know how they can have letters since it's their first issue.
Did they have family write in?
It's a lot of leftovers from Starlog, I'm sure, because there's a letter about Battlestar Galactica. One about Mick Jagger being in some black hole movie, a Star Wars question, something from the Magic Sword, somebody wrote about the Wiz. So trouble getting the ball rolling here. Page 8, article about Doctor Who. Doctor Who gives a shit, am I right? Okay, page 10. Tom Savini, new master of magical makeup. Can't get off the fucking magical train.
Yeah,
you give it a rest. Not everything is swords and sorcery. Jesus Christ. So this is an interview with him talking about doing makeup on Dawn of the Dead. Now the tone is set. This is it. This is everything this magazine is. An interview with Tom Savini talking about Dawn of the Dead.
Right.
They would recycle this shit for the next 50 years. 45, counting. And there's nothing new. It's all the same stories we know. We've heard him tell these stories a million times. But this is it. This is Genesis. This is chapter 1. Fangoria begins right here on page 10. Page 14. Monster No More. After over 2 decades of typecasting, Christopher Lee celebrates his triumphant farewell to monsterdom in this exclusive interview. So this is an interview with Christopher Lee saying goodbye to doing monster movies because he's tired of being typecast as Dracula, which I don't know who's feeding off of who here, because that's not really the case. He never really moved away from horror. Fangoria's like, ooh, we got a hook. Let's drive this home. Or if they're actually like talking him into leaving horror just to get a story out of this. But he does talk about the waning quality of Hammer movies and how he just kept doing it to make money. He talks about Wicker Man and how he thinks that's the best thing he's ever done. I mean, if you look at all these different things, all these various vampires and mummies and Fu Manchu and all these different characters. But at this very moment of this interview, the thing he is most proud of, he had just done a 007 movie. He was just in Airport 77. But the thing he is most proud of at the time of this interview is he hosted Saturday Night Live. And he talks about He said the first telecast got a rating of 36 and the rerun got 33 or 34, which means that somewhere in the region of 50 to 55 million people saw me do that show. And he's very happy that everyone got to see him be silly.
That's awesome. I don't blame him.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to meet Loaf. I beg your pardon? What? Oh!
Page 21, an amazing Amazon adventure. It is also the 25th anniversary of Creature from the Black Lagoon. So Gilman and Godzilla are the same age. Weird thing about this. A universal monster came so late in the game. I would say the last to join the Mount Rushmore of universal monsters, and it was thought of on a whim, like it didn't come from some old book. I guess that's true. That's true of.
It was an original idea.
So was Wolfman technically, and technically so was the Mummy.
Wasn't Wolfman kind of derived?
Well, I mean, everything came from sort of lore.
Yeah.
Well, even there was even a werewolf movie before the Wolfman, Werewolf of London, which no one counts that one because no one saw it. In 1953, producer William Alland, Alland, would you say Alland or Alland? He was an actor, also.
Okay.
Not much of one. He has a small part in Citizen Kane, actually. He was friends with Orson, anyway. Has an idea he wants to make a sort of mutant to add to the Universal monster stable. And it's as simple as that. So simple that he's a producer and he has this idea. So what's the first thing he does? He doesn't write that. He doesn't think of a story. He doesn't hire a screenwriter. He goes to Bud Westmore, the head of Universal's makeup department, and says, design me something, and then we will come up with a story. So Universal comes up with this design, makes the creature, tests it out by throwing it into an Abbott and Costello short, just as it's almost like background. And that was the first appearance of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, which was like maybe, I don't know, a few months before the actual movie, Creature from Black Lagoon, comes out. Just on a weird journalistic side, that there's a few paragraphs about this stuff here, and then the next several pages is literally just a play-by-play synopsis of what happens in the movie. Just paragraph after paragraph. It's like it's like you're reading the treatment of the movie, all the way up until it's describing the end, scene by scene.
Okay.
Like they were trying to fill the pages, and they really didn't have the material, so they described the movie.
Okay.
Which is okay. It's kind of didn't have spoiler warnings back then. Same thing on page 27, The New Wolfman, which is an article about some werewolf movie that came out in 1979. Again, a whole just one singular page that just describes a play-by-play of everything that happens in the movie. And it doesn't matter because this 1979 Wolfman movie, Earl Owensby's, which was from, I believe, Earl Owensby Studios, went into oblivion. No one's ever seen this movie. Have you ever seen this movie? I've never seen this movie. No one has. It's completely gone. I'd be shocked.
If it's good.
I'd be shocked if anyone has seen this movie.
It was never released?
No, 1979's The Wolfman. I think this is a testament as to where movies were. Nobody wanted it. It's okay. So it's a werewolf movie. It takes place in 1910. We don't want that. We want The Howling. We want an American werewolf in London. We want something new. If you're gonna take the old stuff, we want a twist. We want a contemporary twist. Page 28, The Amityville Horror, Real or Real? It's two different spellings of real.
Yuck.
And this is it. This is they have some publicity photos in glorious black and white, a whole 2-page spread. We We want the Gru. We want blood. We want this is bland.
If they were still,
I know.
figuring out life.
I know. But on page 30, 25 years of Godzilla. So the idea was kind of a ripoff of the beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Is it Gojira or Gojira?
I don't know.
I don't know either. But I didn't know that it was that, and that Godzilla is actually sort of a kind of different movie. When it came to America, they messed with it. They re-edited it. They added stuff. They added scenes with American actors. I didn't know that it was a completely different version. This is probably common knowledge, but I don't know
I don't know the legacy of these movies.
I don't know Godzilla well enough.
I haven't seen them since I was a little kid, but I used to watch them all the time.
A big pull-out poster, which is very much intact in here, but I'm sure the internet can show us what this looks like, because here it shall remain. No Fangoria would be complete without a rubber masks.
Oh, yeah.
They're largely science fiction ones, these weird aliens. Makeup kits, it's exciting. That's one sentence. I don't know, I love them. Page 45, Alex Gordon, The Deadly Bees, B-movie producer. We've talked about him before because they're always talking to Alex Gordon. He was like, I think he lived at Fangoria offices. And always telling the same stories. He was friends with Ed Wood. And that is his big, I wouldn't say it's his biggest deal. It's his biggest deal to us because he wrote something called The Atomic Monster, which became Bride of the Monster. Bela Lugosi. His character was not included in the Tim Burton movie. It was filmed as Bride of the Monster. I had nothing to do with the production, and the script was completely rewritten. Unfortunately, the movie was very, very cheaply made. I think the octopus monster they used was a raincoat. At least it looked like a raincoat in the final film. Well, we know what he's talking about there.
How do you turn this on?
Well, somebody misplaced the octopus motor. So when you get in there and fight with him, shake his legs around. It looks like he's killing you. Okay.
And on page 50, Galactica's Lost Aliens. I guess Battlestar Galactica had just gone off the air. They're real sad about that. They just couldn't leave. They couldn't leave Starlog behind.
Well, eventually they did.
Eventually they did, but can you just leave well enough alone?
The thing is, everyone that was on Starlog was probably handed this, and this is their comfort zone. This is what they knew. They knew how to write this. They knew how to work with this.
I know, but they're ignoring so much. Okay, so the very next page, another, again, 2-page spread, Alien, a little collage of black and white pictures with some captions.
This is horror and sci-fi. They should have been all over this.
This should have been the cover. This should have been everything. I mean, yes. So in the next 2 issues, they do talk a little bit more about Alien, and there is a poster. We covered that issue, which again, that issue, which had Christopher Lee on the cover, promoting Arabian Adventure.
Oh, I know that issue.
Because we talked about that one. Well, yeah, he's promoting Arabian Adventure, which again, that should have never been a cover.
No.
It works as a little blurb here.
But I think they were just excited to have a Christopher
Lee movie in what was probably going to end up being the worst thing he's ever been in.
Who can compare with jet-age heroes like James Bond and Superman? For the answer, travel back in time to an age of wonders, to a world of powerful magic and dark mysteries.
Page 54, the new shape of animation. It all started with a mouse, but in the 70s, animation has been given a new life by rabbits and hobbits. Direct reference to Watership Down and Lord of the Rings. Don't think a lot about animated movies in the 70s or 80s. There were some obscurities in the 80s that found us because we were of that generation. But someone like Disney animated movies, that wasn't a thing anymore. Unless you count like the Black Cauldron. Rescuers, maybe? I don't know when that came out.
Rescuers, All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Maybe. Was what was the one with Billy Joel? Because Disney, once Disney struck with Little Mermaid, that was it.
Oh, okay.
Then they were on a roll. Then it was Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Lion King. Then that's it. They own the 90s. And now they own, well, everything. That's it. All because of Ariel.
All because of Ariel.
Now they own this. They own this video. But I don't know. You see this stuff like this old Lord of the Rings thing, or again, Watership Down. It's like creepy.
Oh yeah.
Creepy animated, like heavy metal. Like very unsettling. Like,
It is. I feel like it had an anime edge.
it did. You always felt like either something horribly violent or overtly sexual was going to happen, even if it didn't. The way Pixar would circumnavigate that and make no one look quite human on purpose to avoid the creepiness of looking kind of human, because that's where stuff like DreamWorks, where stuff like Polar Express, where people are like, oh, I don't like this, turn it off. And then page 58, it's like a bunch of fantasy art of knights and wizards and this kind of stuff.
Are those,
Frank Frazetta? No, but they are pushing him on other pages. This is the kind of direction they think they're going in. You know what's also there's so many things. So the slasher boom is missing. Heavy metal is missing. Once that met up with Fangoria, everything was going to change. The 80s were going to 80s. I don't know if this magazine led the way or followed suit or just was in cahoots, but it all meshed. This blueprint is trembling under the weight of the 1970s and the sort of staleness that we were talking about. If they had just done a retrospective, I mean, Halloween was fucking huge the year prior to this magazine. They could have done a big article on that. Like,
probably gotten an interview
still going
with
strong.
Carpenter. And...
Yeah, what's said. I mean, eventually, they'd all be tight with all these people. You know, Cronenberg was big at this time. Yeah, The Brood, because Cronenberg was their guy. I say this on every one of these videos we make. Fangoria's favorite movie maker was Cronenberg. But yeah, instead they choose whatever. Doctor Who, Monster Invasion, upcoming stuff, Phantasm, Arabian Adventure.
Does that even constitute as
No, it's they equate it to a Ray Harryhausen Sinbad type thing, when actually it was just the worst Star Wars ripoff you could ever imagine.
A swift and merciful death.
Blue Sunshine.
Oh.
That was good. That's a good one. From the makers of Squirm. Did you know? I didn't know that. The Dracula, John Badham's Dracula with Frank Langella. Patrick, Shockwaves. Here's one. The Shining. Most of the breathless anticipation in Hollywood's horror circles, there it is, there's horror, is being reserved for Stanley Kubrick's production of Stephen King's The Shining. King is the author of such well-received books as Carrie, Salem's Lot, and Night Shift. Kubrick is universally regarded as one of the greatest filmmakers in cinema today, with Paths of Glory, 2001, and Clockwork Orange to his credit. The pairing of these two talents in The Shining may produce one of the most talked-about terror films in years. The story combines psychic abilities with hell-spawned demons, all within the confines of a 100-room hotel in upstate New York. Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall star in this Warner Brothers release set to premiere next Christmas. Saw it on the television. They're doubling down on Starlog. It's coming out monthly now. Well, I guess when Superman is making tons of money, you go where the money is. You need a Friday the 13th to start coming out once a year.
Elm Street.
There's a sort of base there. Yes. There's your soil. And the rest is history. They didn't have enough. They didn't have enough distance. They didn't have the hindsight to see, oh, this is what this decade that we're still in felt like. Here are the best movies from it. What you needed is the schlock and crap of the 80s to look back at the 70s and say, you know what? Here were a few good things in there. Same way you needed distance from the 80s, which sort of felt shitty when you were too close to it. Now you can go back and say, you know, a lot of it was trash, but so here are the good things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wipe off the cobwebs. You come for a full circle a little bit, because now the magazine is just as almost as sort of uninteresting as it was then in these early issues.
Did it go away for a while and come back?
It did go away for a while, yeah. And before it went away, it was the worst it had ever been. It was so cheap. They stopped doing like on-set photography. They were taking stills from like DVDs, and it just looked like garbage. Weren't a lot of great movies coming out either, too. Like I wasn't too interested in coverage of every Saw movie. Like now, it's the newer issues are pretty sterile. Yeah, it feels a bit like a GQ magazine. But I want this new one with the Maxine cover. Largely because they changed their look, noticeably changed it, not just in a subtle way, just for once, just as a joke to make it look like the cover of a wee magazine from the 80s. So yeah, I want to grab that one for the novelty of it, because these are all about novelty and fine literature.
See the sky filled with flying carpets in the most unique aerial battle ever filmed.